Support is provided in part by Conway Shield. Those who answer the call and risk it all for the safety and well-being of others deserve someone willing to give their all in return. Conway Shield is built on the shoulders of 3 service legacies. Customizing the nation's very best firefighting shields has expanded to providing the most effective technology, tools, and training for today's fire and law leaders. Learn more at conwayshield.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Leadership Under Fire Humanizing the Narrative podcast. I'm your host, Timothy Clark. Today's episode is part 2 of a 2-part conversation with Jason Brezler and Jim McNamara, where we continue on Leadership Under Fire's 2024 year in review. All right, we talked briefly about line of duty death reports, and I know, Jason, you've been working pretty heavily and submitted a paper to NIOSH in 2024 regarding line of duty death investigations and the reporting process. Where do things currently stand?
Yeah, so in 2023, backdrop, we submitted a paper. They solicited stakeholders, American Fire Service stakeholders. I think it's probably federally regulated, but there's a timeline. They solicited departments, leaders, organizations, agencies to provide feedback on their reporting processes. So we, as a team, we created a methodology, human factors methodology. We've talked about it at length on previous episodes. So we submit our feedback in the form of a paper. It was provocative, and in many ways it challenged conventional wisdom. It challenged mainstream practices. I'm sure that there are folks that probably viewed it as being antagonistic. It was perhaps intellectually antagonistic, but it was professional. Submitted it, didn't hear anything. Okay, so fast forward a couple of months, probably more accurately a year later, they then solicit, same organization, right? Agency then solicits the same folks again for more feedback specific to human factors. So we just did a deeper dive. We built on the methodology that we had previous. A couple of us have gone back to school and have been pursuing some pretty rigorous graduate studies or programs in human factors and such. And we followed up. We sent them a more detailed analysis and assessment with inclusive of recommendations, our findings and recommendations. And I think that there have been a number of line of duty death fires in recent years where really good folks, firefighters, company officers, chief officers who have been tasked or have volunteered, which it's tough duty, have volunteered to serve on these committees and try to make sense of these sorts of events, have conferred with us, and I say this with a great degree of humility, in that several of us on this team have been to those types of fires and emergencies, right? And it's important that this story be documented, but that it be humanized. And there's perhaps no greater honor, given the significance that these reports have. Like I say that these reports they're religious artifacts, right? Within the institutional norms of the American Fire Service. I mean, you referenced the other day, you picked one up that certainly predates your time and probably predates everyone's time that was working that particular day. You pick it up, and it's even just hold it, right? You treat it with great dignity. To be conferred and consulted with, and to I think be leading the way in where we're going to go, making sense of these events, is I think without question one of the most significant things that we've done as a team. And there's a technical, actually the word is non-technical, anything about how a building behaves or how equipment behaves or how fire behaves is considered to be technical. And within the vernacular of human factors, anything that's about people is considered to be non-technical, right? Which is, I think, interesting. But, in many instances, we've discreetly or quietly offered some assistance. There's a couple of reports, investigations underway right now, which we're lending influence to. And I think we're serving to educate, enlighten, and most significantly, in every instance, our guys and gals are offering encouragement to those people who navigate these these processes. It takes a toll on you. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought that years ago. I would have been dismissive of like, oh, that's the guy that writes the report after like, you know, guys were jammed up on the floor above or jumping out of windows. You name it. And now about cognition and what we're continuing to learn. Like, yeah, man, the guy physically wasn't there, but mentally and emotionally, every time he heard an account, every time he listened to the audio, every time he watched the video, you name it, right? He was going to that fire. It doesn't necessarily have the kitchen to come back to after that, it's humbling to be doing the work that we're doing on that front. And I think now there's been a shift within probably the last year where we were viewed as being the intellectual antagonist. And I think now people are looking at the team as a protagonist. Like they understand that our intentions are entirely pure and noble. It's important. It's important work for sure, Tim.
Very good. Yeah. Switching gears a little bit to try to maybe lighten the mood in the room. What are some of the most exciting opportunities you experienced in 2024 and or the most meaningful challenges that you've had to navigate? We'll start with you, Jason.
Yeah, professionally, I retired from the Marine Corps. Jimmy and I spoke. We did a conversation earlier this year that we recorded. What's interesting is I retired May 1st. My retirement was at the end of May. 24 years a Marine officer, 28 years of naval service. I haven't missed it. So I still have some level of connection through service academy. Some of the work I continue to do at the Naval Academy, West Point, but I thought I might, but I think also it's because I got so much going on at work, and I've got so much going on at home. Now, conventional Marines go down range. I could quickly change my position on missing it. Yeah, it was a nice ending. I was one of the things I mentioned earlier, or back to that, lost my train of thought when I was speaking about having a level of compassion and empathy for these individuals that are trying to make sense of these events, and trying now in more recent years to kind of humanize the narrative and create a written document that tells a story that's constructive. One of the toughest weeks of my life as a Marine, or 2 weeks, was spent interviewing the Marines that had been in Afghanistan and the end of the Afghan mission in August of 2021. Heart-wrenching. Merely documenting those historical accounts. And that was really the last significant project I worked on as a Marine. It's cool to retire where it all started, Annapolis, and it was even, to have some of my closest friends and family there, my kids there. That was cool. And then I got promoted earlier this year, and came back to Manhattan, lower Manhattan, and parts of Midtown, and it's been a terrific year. Like I've really enjoyed coming back in a somewhat similar capacity, but also different capacity. Like the expectations, I think, of a captain are different than they are of a lieutenant, understandably so. But in many ways, your the relationship you have with the guys and gals under your charge is more similar than it is different. But it's I've had a couple of really challenging fires and emergencies since I came back. Working with a lot of, just the quality and caliber of the guys and gals that I consistently work with is what I think makes the rank so fulfilling. And the uniquely different thing about being a captain as opposed to being a lieutenant is you get to function as an acting acting battalion chief. So, my first day this summer, acting as a battalion chief, went to a pretty good job. Cellar in Chinatown, 95-degree day. Companies are delayed to getting in because their 2 members of the NYPD had been shot just blocks away. That on top of normal rush hour congestion, it made for an interesting start to the fire operation in terms of being resource limited, which is typically not our norm in the New York City Fire Department. But that was there was this moment where I'm kind of aware of the fact. I'm like, wait a second, I was just a lieutenant. It wasn't last month, but it felt like last week. It was a couple months before. That was a certainly novel experience. But it's been a very it was hard to leave what had been home in 2 separate ranks, both as a firefighter and then a lieutenant. It was tough to leave a place like that. But this rank is I've had a great year professionally, and then personally, life's good. I mean, it's chaotic, but I always use the word it's joyfully chaotic. Like Sarah and I are blessed to have the 3 kids that we have, but man, they have the energy that these kids have, and the energy that it requires on our part. It's been a great year. So now I'm looking at you, so I'm going to put you on the spot. So I'm going to take the con for a
Jim,
moment.
you're next.
We're going to talk to you, Tim.
I'm going to take the con for a moment. So, well, first, you naturally inherited pretty smooth transition. You inherited Patty's duties.
I did.
Her duties as director of the Fire Museum required her undivided attention. So you were.
I will say, Patty made it all look very easy.
You were next up, man. And of course, you had some background, some experience doing this. So we appreciate. One is I appreciate you stepping up, but that's probably like Tim Clark's year in review of 2024. I don't even know if that even makes the top 10. So real quickly, I'm just gonna. So you got promoted. You continue to serve in your reserve unit, right? As an operator.
Actually, just transferred units, but yes.
Having joined at the not so young age of, how old were you when you?
Entering the bulk of my training, I was 38 years old.
Yeah, which is insane. And most
borderline not recommended, but
most recently, you got promoted to lieutenant. Yeah. That's some year, man.
Yeah, I bought a house, had a baby, and got promoted lieutenant within 3 months of each other.
And equally significant, moved upstate.
And I moved upstate. After 40 years of living in New York City, I finally had to get
Talk
out.
about reinventing yourself, Tim. Yes, how was this year for you?
It's been a lot. There's Jesse Isler, who's a guy I like sometimes. Some of the things he says. He's got some good quotes out there. But he says that every year, try to do one thing that defines your year. I would say in the last 4 years, I've done 4 to 5 things that could define my year in any other year. This year you went big. This year was big. The baby and the promotion were 2 very, very big changes. It's and happening almost simultaneously. My daughter was born on August 31st, which is my birthday, actually. So she and I share a birthday. And September 13th, I was promoted to lieutenant. And so now I had to navigate, a very, very different role. They tell me, and I believe them, that it's probably the biggest switch in responsibilities that you'll have in a career. And all the while, again, trying to navigate being a new father. But I can say I probably would not have been able to do it had my wife Cynthia not taken on the overwhelming amount of the responsibility in terms of, being a mom is hard. It is not easy, just the breastfeeding and just her new role and all that is a very difficult.
So you drive
transition.
to a new firehouse, which changes from time to time. Mm-hmm. You drive home to a new house.
Correct.
A relatively recent spouse, right? You haven't been married too long.
No, we got busy.
And a brand new baby.
Yeah, it changes. But it's been great.
What's your foray into fatherhood? What's been like you thought it might be, and what's been different than you thought it might be?
You know, a young child smiling at you is probably better than I thought it was going to. I expected it to be good, but it's probably better than I thought it was going to be. And I knew, like, my line right now is I mean, you're in a support role, right? It's not about you. It's about baby and mom, and your job is to do everything you can to support them. So like it's very much so not about you. But my line is, like, being a father hasn't been that hard. Being a husband has been very hard. You know, just doing the things, because she's navigating all kinds of changes, you know, both practically and biologically, and trying to help her through those transitions is very difficult. You know, dealing with a crying baby is not as difficult. You know, so I took a lot. Sebastian Younger gave me a very specific piece of advice, which I've taken to heart. It was, you know, it's being a father is hard, but it's not that hard. You know, when the baby's crying, they'll stop crying.
That guy always knows the right thing to say.
He's great.
Yes.
He's absolutely great.
He always says the right thing, and you're like, that's exactly how this.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the when you're getting overwhelmed by it, just remember, like, it's not going to be forever. Like, this baby will stop crying. She will start eating. She will, you know, whatever the problem is right now, it will end. Maybe
Plus you're MPI trained.
I
joke, because it's one thing to take the core tenets and tactics and techniques of MPI and apply it to the operational environment. It's a whole nother thing to apply it to raising kids.
But I also cannot overstate how important it's been, right? I mean, it's. I remember in the hospital room before the baby was actually born, Cynthia was obviously all nervous with, you know, in labor actively, and she asked me, like, "Are you nervous?" And I said, "No. You know, whatever the problem." Like, we're gonna do fine. It was like a confidence in our abilities to be parents. Like, I was not at all nervous, you know. I mean, she was nervous for obviously all kinds of other reasons, and that I think are entirely justifiable. But I said, what we're gonna do is we're gonna have problems. We're gonna control the things that we can control. There's gonna be any number of things that we can control, and our job is to not get bogged down by those things. I'm not saying we're always successful at that, you know, but it
sounds like Fader for fatherhood.
You just gave him an idea for another book. You know? Yeah, I mean, and that's what it is. I mean, it's sports psychology 101. And if I could do anything to help other people, it would be to give them these principles. You know, just there are going to be any number of things in your life, whether you're at work or as a parent or just in life, that you cannot control, and you won't be 100% successful at this. But if you can tease out the things that are within your control and the things that are not, and control the things you can control and let go of the things you can't, you will be better off as a human being in all facets. And that's how I've been trying to approach it. You know, when she's crying, she's crying. There's only a handful of things you can do for a baby to get him to stop crying. And if none of those things work, then guess what? Now you have to deal with a crying baby. You know,
are you applying that same construct at work as you're bouncing around, working in different fly houses?
Sure. Yeah, I think so. You know, there's so in a new role, I've been to actually a couple of pretty decent fires so far, and,
sure.
And that is just such an overwhelming experience. I don't even think you can apply, like, I need more reps under my belt right now in that role to be able to apply these principles, I think. But as far as like operating on a day-to-day basis in a new company with players I don't know, you know, getting them to try to drill or just do the things that we need to do as a company, I would say so. There are things in my day that I can control. There are things that I can't. Focus on the things I can control. And Jim and I were talking about it earlier, and I think a lot of that is just ask questions. Ask questions to insert ideas into their mind, to have it now be their decision, not my decision. And again, there's only so much you can do as a covering boss without stepping on too many toes. It's a really interesting balance you're trying to navigate between being a quote unquote leader and trying to get the buy-in of the people in the firehouse, right? There's only so many things.
Being a covering officer is it could be a graduate level thesis in uncertainty and complexity and variability and sociology and psychology. There is no analogy for it. There isn't. You don't show up in the military to lead a unit for a day. You don't show up to coach a youth soccer team for an evening.
I will say there is some parallel. It's a little different. There's some parallel to Air Force Special Warfare career fields, because at least historically, the last 20 years or so, generally speaking, these are 1 or 2 person teams that are then put onto another team. So TACPs historically are going to work with an Army unit, whether that's Green Berets or the 82nd Airborne, and you're not in a leadership role.
No, that's the difference.
But you're
an attachment, and you're more providing technical expertise than you are leading.
Yeah, but you have an enormous level of influence on leaders. I'll say that. And so you could be an E4 or E5 who's talking to an 06, like a colonel, telling him what needs to be done in an operational environment. And so the parallel here is you're navigating personalities in a off balance situation where you don't have necessarily, they don't know who you are, right? They don't know what you're like or what your job is or what your skill set is, but you're navigating the human being in ways that I think is similar. But that's the difference. Is you're not.
When the battalion commander calls down and says and wants to talk to his subordinate, you don't get to say, "I'm going to actually put the technical advisor on the phone. And he's going to explain the calculus that was this decision." Mm. I think that's the difference. But the notion that you can walk into a firehouse and put your gear next to the rig, and you can go to a fire with virtually unknown to the guys you're working with, and they unknown to you, and report into a chief who you've never spoken to before.
Which is exactly what happened a few weeks ago. Ladder 34. I walked in, and we went to a pretty ripping job within a couple hours of being there. I didn't know these guys. They didn't know me. I didn't know the chief. The chief didn't know me. I was 2 weeks in the field. We got through it.
Did you enjoy it?
It was amazing. It was awesome. It was incredible. And the guys did a wonderful, fantastic job. And, I think we did well. Obviously, takeaways, things I could have done better, communications I missed or should have made, because that's your primary role now as a boss is your tool is your radio. It was great.
There's an upside to all of this, like there is to anything in life, right? There's of course a downside, and you could say this isn't a best practice. But the number of people that you get to meet, and the number of perspectives that you're exposed to,
yes,
and the number of different conversations, and the number of different firehouses that you work in that have their own subculture, right, or within certain groups in that firehouse. In that regard, if we are a product, I'm going to contradict exactly what I just said, but if we are a product, if our notion, if our position is that he with the most slides, he or she with the most slides, who's able to maintain a composure, is increasingly likely to be able to win because of that slide deck. If that's true, then the fact that you can work in as many different files with as many different guys, like if you are a product of your collective experiences, both firsthand and off, one-off, then there actually is some, like obviously Sebastian, right? Invoke Sebastian, huge proponent of the power of the story, and there's obviously there's cognitive validation to that, but from that perspective, the covering officer model is actually of value.
I would say for me personally, there's been enormous value. And it gets back to the controllables. I can't control how the New York City Fire Department handles recently promoted bosses. But in the meantime, I'm going to learn everything I can possibly learn from the people I can learn from. I've been working in some pretty reputable companies, and I see what they do. I see how they do them, and I've been learning a ton in a very, very short amount of time. And so again, I think you're right. I think there's enormous value in the company officer bouncing way that we do things. Again, it's imperfect, but if nothing's perfect, if it's going to be imperfect, let's take as much value out of it as we can.
Yeah, it's a great way of putting it.
But I also feel like Jim has something to say here.
Walk us through what it's like. You're going up the stairs, you have a job, and you have 2 guys. Did you remember their names?
Yes.
And what was it like? So you're now leading them into battle. You're trying to check on people, and you have to stop and say, "What's their names?" Like that's really the thrust of it. Now it's on.
What I can tell you is the company being a very good company. There was an engine proby was on the can, and it was as far as I understand, it was his first time ever working in a truck. So now they actually took a 10-year pretty experienced guy, put him on the inside. I think to watch me as much as anybody else, right? Because they didn't know who I was, right?
Sure.
Fair enough. Like I can respect that. And we did probably a 90-minute long drill in the beginning of the tour.
Beautiful.
For the can man.
Beautiful.
On what a can man does. Like how often have a 90-minute.
The fire guy smiled upon it, right, Jimmy?
Absolutely.
That's where he's going to go next.
And I said to them after the fact, I was like, good thing we did that can drill. It worked out great. He did a great job. We went in, we had a conversation beforehand. Their experienced guy was going to be going in ahead. I was going to hang out with the probie, and we're going to go in together. And it was like in some ways a pretty bread and butter sort of fire, but also there was some clutter conditions, there were some issues with it that we had to navigate. But everyone did great. Everyone knew what their job was going in, and then pivoted when we needed to pivot. It was the guys did great.
But just that, like 34 is a great shop, always has been. But you took the time beforehand, you got on the same page. Just 5 or 10 minutes of getting on the same page will pay dividends you cannot calculate.
I totally agree.
That's a perfect story.
Totally agree. Yeah. Your 2024 changes and experiences and challenges?
I think
we talked about it a little bit.
Yeah. But by and large, I mean, life is getting punched in the face. It's about getting back up. And I know we'll probably talk later about what we expect for 25, but it's what life is, man. I've been punched in the face a lot, and you have only one thing to do: get back up, and we'll be fine.
That's all you really need to hear.
Yeah, I mean, like we're sitting here in Times Square. Right? It's beautiful. It looks like Disneyland. Bro, I worked all 4 years of high school. I worked on Broadway here in 45th Street, the Music Box Theater. This place was hell on earth. It was beautiful. It was glorious. Right? You talk about the world changing. So if you come from that world, everything else is a walk in the park, man.
I'd say if you were here in 2015, 16,
yeah,
and you went into a time warp and you came back today, you'd be curious as to what happened.
Yeah.
It's certainly not 1974, but it's not 2012 outside either.
Sure. But have like people who have, you talk about slides, life experience also matters. All those things, right? And Marines talk about it, right? It's not just reading your books. It's about reading history and philosophy, that all those things come together so that when Tim Clark is leading 34 truck down the hallway, we're as prepared as we can possibly be. Glorious.
All right. In closing, we've had a pretty good conversation going so far. What are some of the things, and Jim, I think we'll start with you, that you're looking forward to in 2025?
The new year brings hope, renewal, and the idea that the year will take a better course than the previous one. I look forward to continuing the academic work that we're doing. I look forward to working with the team and continuing to press the message and to share what we know with others. And I'm also looking forward to being in the country, which is really, I've grown to love it. It's so, it's so therapeutic.
In the country, meaning outside of the city.
Yes. I was unaware that there is life north of New York City, but apparently there is.
He gets it.
And just to continue on this path, every time that we think we've hit that high note, we open another door and realize, oh my God, there's so much more to do, so much more to learn, and so much more to share. And I look forward to every ounce of it.
Very nice. Jason?
Yeah, on the LUF front, I'm really excited about the opportunity that some of these departments have now to move beyond the initial exposure to MPI, through the course of the week-long immersive course, and for them to start build out their own program and their own roadmap. I think in that regard, like Cherry Hill, the Cherry Hill Fire Department in New Jersey has been really the model program outside of the FDNY. We've got a couple more course iterations lined up with Baltimore, but I'm super optimistic about what they're going to be able to do. We'll be back in Connecticut. The Philadelphia Fire Department's about to enter the foray of tackling human performance in a programmatic fashion. There's a couple of departments that are working to secure funds. One of the things I'm most excited about is one of our collaborative partners, and I won't share too many details because it's not solidified yet, but things are in motion. I'm quite optimistic. Is working to hire a member of our team as an embedded human performance advisor and mental skills coach who work primarily with their training cadre under the umbrella of their training bureau. This individual has a really impressive pedigree when it comes to working with tier 1 outfits and professional sport teams, and the notion that somebody like this would be on site building relationships with members of the training cadre as well as students or probies or recruits, what have you. Really excited about that, the potential for that. I mean, I think that that relationship could be the first, or that role, right, that billet per se, could be the first of its kind in the fire service. So the fact that organizations are seeing value in these types of resources, having already embraced the value of a human performance or MPI program, is really exciting. Personally, I'm ready to be finished with this graduate program. So I just finished my 9th class last week. I've written approximately 100 pages of papers for each class. Like, I knew that the program was going to be rigorous. It exceeded my estimate, and very, very appreciative for the opportunity that has been. I have 1 class remaining, and then I'm done, and I'll get a piece of my life back that I haven't had for the past 2 years. A couple dozen hours a week that will be put to good use at home or doing other sorts of things. So I'm looking forward to being able to read again leisurely and taking a break from academic journal articles and research, and I'll let Jimmy carry that baton for a while as he continues to do good things with Andy, and I'm looking forward to another presumably active year ahead with my kids at home. So yeah, man, I'm looking forward to 2025. What about you, Tim?
I mean, for me, it's a little obvious. I think, continuing to watch little Sadie grow up to be a little girl is, I think, going to be something I'm really looking forward to in 2025. And then figuring out where I land as a company officer up in Division 7, and just trying to grow that skill set as best I can, as quickly as I can. Those are things I'm looking forward to. Those are my immediate challenges that I'm looking forward to in 2025.
All while continuing to host the LUF podcast. From
While continuing to host the LUF podcast. I started a business this year also, it's another thing on the plate.
Just an upstate business venture of sorts.
Yeah.
There were 3 people that I never thought would leave this city. Fader, you, Tim Clark. It sounds like the big guy might even be heading out of town for periods of time.
Summer, yeah. We'll see how it goes.
Summer away.
If I leave, the city will just crumble.
I've left the city a number of times, and I keep getting drawn back. We'll see what the future has in store. I went away to college for that exact reason. I just was tired of New York City, but then I came back, and then I spent a year living in Colorado, a few years after that, and then came back, and then
the big guy he'd miss the food.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking about lunch
so if you think Jim McNamara is a fervent student of human performance, talk to him about cuisine. It's a postdoc.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot less,
Less
options. Upstate.
Going to eat in a nice restaurant with Jim McNamara, it's an experience.
All right. I'm a little insulted I haven't been invited before now, but now we're gonna have.
He downplays it until and he's like, what do you want? I'm whatever, like he's. And then when you actually, oh man, this week we just spent up in the Hartford area. We made a couple of return trips to the same restaurant, and Jimmy was in it. J-Mac was in his glory, man.
In the zone, baby, in the zone.
He was in a flow state.
All right. But yeah, thank you guys very much. I think this has been a really great conversation. And I look forward to doing this again in 2025.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Jason.
Thanks, fellas.
The Leadership Under Fire podcast provides a platform that helps to prepare performance leaders to navigate the moral, mental, emotional, intellectual, and physical rigors in high-risk and ultra-competitive settings by developing strength of mind, body, character, and critical thought. For more on this, visit leadershipunderfire.com.